I hope you had a great weekend. We have a lot of catching up to do. And here to discuss what's making the rounds today, NBC's Stephanie Gosk, NBC News legal analyst Dan Goldman, and co-host of PBS's In Principle, Amy Holmes. Welcome to all of you. Good morning. And we begin today with the Supreme Court vacancy that is dominating the headlines. The stakes are high, given the High Court's influence on everything from abortion to gun control. The latter an issue on people's minds today, as this is the one-year mark of when a gunman carried out the worst mass shooting in our country's history in Las Vegas. You recall 58 people died, hundreds more were injured. And this morning, our thoughts and prayers go out to the survivors and all of those who lost loved ones. As for the critical Supreme Court seat, I mean, that's just one of the many reasons why people watch the High Court so carefully and care so deeply about who gets on it. This whole thing could be decided based on what, if anything, the FBI finds in the next 5 days. That's how long agents have to investigate the allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Of course, there's already been some investigation by the congressional leaders. So how's this all going? NBC's Peter Alexander is going to get us caught up. Watch.
This morning, we're getting a clearer picture of some of those the FBI is talking to in the race to meet Friday's deadline to complete its background investigation into Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Christine Blasey Ford's legal team telling NBC News Dr. Ford has not yet been contacted by the FBI. But on Sunday, the FBI did speak to Deborah Ramirez, Kavanaugh's accuser from his college years at Yale. A source familiar with the conversation says Ramirez provided a list of witnesses who she says can corroborate her allegation that Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a party, an allegation Kavanaugh denies. Also new this morning, NBC News has learned that the FBI will be talking to Kavanaugh's former Yale classmate, Chad Ludington, today. Ludington came forward Sunday night saying he became, quote, deeply troubled by what has been a blatant mischaracterization by Brett himself of his drinking at Yale, adding, when Brett got drunk, he was often belligerent and aggressive. President Trump insists the White House isn't putting any limits on the FBI.
They have free reign. They're going to do whatever they have to do, whatever it is they do.
Tweeting on Saturday, I want them to interview whoever they deem appropriate at their discretion. Despite the president's words, the FBI has received no new instructions changing the limits imposed by the White House counsel's office on the investigation, according to a senior U.S. official and another source familiar with the matter. Those limits, the sources say, include a specific witness list that does not include Julie Swetnick, who came forward through her lawyer, Michael Avenatti, last week, accusing Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct in high school, an allegation he also vigorously denies. Top Democrat Dianne Feinstein sent a letter Sunday to White House counsel Don McGahn and FBI Director Christopher Wray, requesting a copy of the marching orders the White House sent to the FBI. The president's team claims the White House is not interfering.
The White House is not micromanaging this process. The Senate is dictating the terms.
On 60 Minutes, Republican Senator Jeff Flake, a crucial swing vote who called for the investigation, and Democrat Chris Coons say they're awaiting the FBI's report.
If Judge Kavanaugh is shown to have lied to the committee, nomination's over?
Oh, yes. I would think so.
For his part, President Trump is blaming politics, tweeting the Democrats are starting to put out the word that the time and scope is not enough. For them, it will never be enough. The president's son, Don Jr., weighing in, speaking to Daily Mail TV about Kavanaugh's accusers.
For the people who are real victims of these things, when it is so obviously political in cases like this, it really diminishes the real claims.
So, when we last met, there was no FBI investigation, and they were forging forward to a vote. And then Jeff Flake said, you know what, I'll vote him out of committee. I'll say this vote can go to the Senate floor as long as there's an investigation. And now there is one. And almost immediately the Democrats responded, it's not enough. The scope's not wide enough, and the time's not long enough. And the Republicans who didn't want Flake to flip said, you see, there's no satisfying them. And the Democrats said, we're talking about potential sexual misconduct, and you can't button that up in 5 days. So where do we stand?
I think anyone that heard that decision, that there was going to be an FBI investigation and said, Phew, so glad it's over now. We'll get to the bottom of this now. That was never going to be the case. You knew you were going to have this wrangling back and forth. But I think that, claims that it is limited, I don't quite understand them. If there was a list of 4, why are we also talking about Chad Lovington being interviewed by the FBI? It clearly seems that at least within that group of 4, the FBI has the ability to go and talk to other people that might be relevant.
This is the guy who says that he was a bigger drinker than he claimed.
The college roommate where the judges said that there were problems in terms of the relationships amongst the roommates. But I also want it to be clear that with the FBI investigation, this isn't CSI or Law and Order. They're not going to be looking for forensic evidence. They're talking to people. They're interviewing them. Then they deliver that information to the Senate to bring us back to where we are, which is the Senate advice and consent.
That shouldn't be the only thing that there is, because they should look into Mark Judge's Safeway records, where Dr. Ford says that she saw him when he worked at a Safeway. They should look into the house, try to figure out where this house was, what it was, see if it hasn't been renovated, if they can match it up to Dr. Ford's description.
Oh, my God, Dan.
But these are the ways that an FBI investigation would ordinarily work.
I mean, she doesn't know where it happened. That's the problem, is the FBI is going to figure out the story she is unable to tell?
Yes.
No, that's not its job.
Let me explain.
That's not its job.
Yes, it is.
No,
in fact,
isn't.
It's very much when a victim comes forward, the victim is not responsible to provide the corroboration.
Well, it would be great if she could at least give a year and a month and a general location, because her story...
I think she's narrowed it down to the summer of '82, and I would start with that July 1st calendar
But if you look at Rachel Mitchell, who was the prosecutor that the Republicans asked to do some of the questioning, she submitted a memo saying, first of all, not only would I never bring this case as a prosecutor, it doesn't even come close to satisfying beyond a reasonable doubt. It doesn't even satisfy by the preponderance of the evidence standard, which means 51% more likely than 49% less likely. Which is the lowest bar in any case. She said it doesn't even satisfy that. And she talked about Dr. Ford's inconsistent account, saying, first she said it happened in the mid-1980s. Then she said it happened in the early 1980s. Then she said it happened in the early 1980s, but she crossed out the word early. Then she said summer of 1982. Then she said it happened in her late teens. Then she said she was 15. Then she failed to explain how she was suddenly able to narrow the time frame. That's just one paragraph of her memo summarizing why she finds Dr. Ford's testimony full of inconsistencies. And now we want the FBI to spend this week going back and scouring the Maryland neighborhood and looking at people's homes and figuring out who renovated and when, what it used to look like, what it looked like.
Megyn?
They're not trying to solve this case, Dan. They're not trying to solve it because it's not a criminal investigation.
Shouldn't we want to figure out whether or not this thing actually happened?
Every
witness, if you're right, and if nobody else can come out with which house it was, and if Mark Judge didn't work at the Safeway in that summer, then that undermines her claims. But why wouldn't we want to know that?
You certainly wouldn't hang, a conviction or a guilty on the judge over when Mark Judge worked at a Safeway.
Right, even if they did see each other.
The allegation is sexual assault, and even the witnesses that the professor has named of being there say they either have no recollection or the party didn't happen, including her friend who said, I don't know Judge Kavanaugh.
I've never been at a party with him, ever.
You would never remember it but for the traumatic experience.
So all of the evidence that helps him, you discredit.
No, there's plenty of evidence. I think he should. The biggest problem I have with this testimony is that he did not just say, I welcome an FBI investigation, and he intentionally didn't say that.
Because he doesn't trust the Democrats on the committee to interpret anything.
What do you mean? The Democrats aren't in control. And let me tell you why that's important, though.
But the Democrats are the ones saying, don't you demand an FBI investigation? And his response is basically, I don't believe you're an open-minded trier of facts. So do I want another 5, 7, 10 days of you trying to beat me up and find things at the last minute to screw my nomination?
Theory.
No, I'm not really in favor of that because I don't trust you.
I have an alternative theory. Brett Kavanaugh said so many things that seem to be provable lies unrelated to the allegations about his yearbook, etc.
Now you're on to something.
And the reason why I think he may have felt comfortable doing that is that he did not think there would be a follow-up investigation to show that those were not true.
And Mitchell doesn't analyze it in this.
Now let's talk about that, because I feel like for the Democrats this is probably the strongest point, because you cannot prove a sexual assault of Dr. Ford. You can't. Even she can't. She's got her testimonial. She has no corroborating witnesses. The people she named do not support her story. Those are the facts on Dr. Ford.
They don't refute her story. They just don't support it.
Correct. There's zero support other than her own testimonial, which is riddled with inconsistencies and poor memory. That is the truth. But his testimonial in the Q&A about his drinking and what these terms. I mean, I've Googled a lot since our last discussion.
What is booze?
You don't even want to know. You don't even want to know. We had a
Don't
discussion last week about this term, which he claimed meant basically was a reference to gas. And Stephanie said, that's not true. You don't know what that was, but it was something very R-rated. Very R-rated.
I mean, I'm not going to address that.
No, it's too R-rated for us to even discuss on morning television. Even in primetime television, we wouldn't be discussing it. And so that, listen, it's unfortunate for Judge Kavanaugh if he chose to lie about those things, but if he did, it's disqualifying. He lied. If he lied under oath. And it is indicative of character.
And that's why the FBI investigation is so important, and it's so important that even if it is limited in subject matter, which it absolutely should be, that it's not. There are no additional limitations as to where the FBI can go within a week.
But are they really going to investigate what Devil's Triangle actually meant in Brett Kavanaugh's mind?
I don't think they are. I think they are staying.
Well, they should. They should ask his friends.
But they're not doing that. They're actually just doing this. I mean, this, as you mentioned, interviewing this guy from Yale was actually about the Ramirez allegation and talking about.
Because one guy says Kavanaugh was a bigger drinker than he's claiming, but there's another friend who says absolutely false. That is not true. And he was never blackout drunk.
Judge Kavanaugh has tons of character witnesses, but again, for the Republican side, the fear is that you're going to have more Michael Avenatti cases, and then that turns into a real circus.
Michael Avenatti is upset that his client Julie Swetnick is not being talked to by the FBI. This is the one who claimed
I'm not sure she wants to be.
Was the victim of an alleged gang rape that Kavanaugh did not participate in. But she says she allegedly claims he was at a party where one happened, and it's emerged from various reporting this weekend. She faced allegations of her own misconduct during a stint at a Portland company 18 years ago. That company claims she told them she graduated from Johns Hopkins, but they learned the school had no record of her. She also falsely described her work experience at a prior employer. They said she engaged in unwelcome sexually offensive conduct herself. They said she made false and retaliatory allegations against her coworkers, that they had been inappropriate with her. They said she took medical leave and simultaneously claimed unemployment benefits. At the same time in D.C., there was a restraining order filed against her by an ex-boyfriend who claims she harassed him, his wife, and their baby. I could go on. So the people who are very upset that the FBI is not looking into Julie Swetnick's allegations, there are reasons for that.
Right. And she may not like the FBI looking more closely at some of these issues.
Avenatti's been begging for the FBI.
What a shock.
Come. So I don't,
He's been begging for TV cameras.
He has been begging for TV cameras.
I don't think that it's correct to say that Julie Swetnick does not want to speak to the FBI.
I'm saying she might not want to for her own good.
She submitted a
She's just making the point that her allegations are tenuous. And
Avenatti also said that
she's got a history.
And that's why if he does have the corroborating witnesses, which he alleges that Avenatti has, that those are going to be very critical. It is she has some real credibility problems. If I were a prosecutor, I'd have real concerns about putting her on the stand. However, that doesn't mean you don't bring a case if there is one to be made. The fact that she has
if Avenatti's got corroborating witnesses, where are they? It's been a week, and he hasn't put a single one forward. Not a one.
And he didn't know when he was called that his client had a restraining order on her.
Yeah.
He didn't even know that.
All he said was, it's all bogus, which that's not going to cut it.